Picture this, it's 1348, and the Black Death is crashing through Europe like an uninvited guest who brought fleas instead of wine. This isn't your average Tuesday night, half the continent's about to check out and the other half's wondering if their onion soup's cursed. Tonight we're diving into how you could have dodged this medieval apocalypse. No pressure, but your choices might mean the difference between a cosy fireside tale or a one-way ticket to a mass grave. So grab a blanket, dim those lights and maybe crack a window for that crisp evening breeze. Let's keep the bad air out, shall we? Oh, and if you're enjoying this grim little journey, smash that like button, subscribe and drop a comment telling me where you're tuning in from. Is it midnight in Tokyo or breakfast time in Boise? I'm curious. Now let's get to it. Surviving the Black Death wasn't about luck, okay? Maybe a smidge, but mostly about outsmarting a world where hygiene was a suggestion, and rats threw better parties than nobles. First up, where you plant your boots matters. Cities. They're basically plague buffets, packed with people, filth and fleas with attitude. Countryside. Now that's your ticket to breathing another day. Stick with me, and we'll unravel how to outwit this pestilent beast one choice at a time. Ready for the next step good, because the plague waits for no one. Imagine you're standing at a crossroads in 1348, your cloak flapping in the chilly wind, and you've got a choice head to the bustling city of London, where markets hum with life and opportunity, or trudge toward a sleepy village where the loudest noise is a goose honking at dawn. Choose wrong and you're shaking hands with the Black Death before supper. Cities like London or Florence weren't the charming medieval hubs of your dreams. No, they were petri dishes of doom. Picture narrow streets slick with sewage where folks tossed chamber pots out windows like it was an Olympic sport. Houses crammed so tight you could hear your neighbours' snores through the walls, and the rats. They weren't just visitors. They were roommates scurrying through open gutters and napping in your grain sack. Cities meant crowds, markets, churches, taverns, where one sneeze could tag you with a flea carrying Yersinia pestis, the plague's calling card. The air reeked of sweat-stale ale and despair, and every handshake was a gamble. Now flip the scene to the countryside. Sure, you're trading city buzz for muddy trails and the occasional angry cow, but space is your shield. Villages had fewer people, meaning fewer fleas hitching rides. A farm up a hill with goats as your only neighbours was like a medieval VIP bunker. Remote monasteries, like those silent Carthusian retreats, were even better isolated, quiet, and practically plague-proof. The math was simple: more people, more death, less company, more birthdays. So if someone whispers the city's fine, it's just a cough, grab your sack, kiss the cobblestones goodbye and hightail it to the hills. Next, we'll talk about keeping your distance, because even your best mate's hug could be a death sentence. You're in 1348, tucked away in a creaky cottage on a windswept hill, far from the city's chaos. The Black Death's out there turning neighbours into grim statistics, and you're wondering how to keep it from knocking. Here's the trick: treat every human like they're smuggling fleas in their pockets, because they probably are. Back then nobody had a clue about germs. They blamed bad air or divine wrath for the plague's rampage. But the smart ones, the ones still breathing by 1349, figured out that dodging crowds was the name of the game. Call it medieval social distancing, no catchy hashtag needed. If you're in a village, skip the market. Those onions aren't worth a flea bite. Weddings, festivals, even church. They're basically plague raves with coughing strangers and shared cups. Instead, hunker down with your cats don't sneeze, and they're great listeners. If your cousin Gregory shows up hacking through the keyhole and begging for stew, bolt the door. Harsh, sure, but letting him in could mean you're all praying your last by Sunday. Some nobles, like the fancy Boccaccio crew in Florence, ditched the city for countryside villas sipping wine and swapping stories while the plague raged. You don't need their gold to copy the vibe, just a knack for saying no to visitors. Every handshake skipped, every tavern ignored boosts your odds. It's not about being rude, it's survival math. Imagine someone stumbles toward you sweating like they bathed in a swamp. Do you pat their back, offer a garlic clove, or sprint like a spooked deer? If you picked sprint, you're catching on. Keep your distance and you might just outlast the pestilence. Up next, we'll dive into why your wardrobe could be a flea's dream home. It's 1348, and you're eyeing your wardrobe wondering what screams I'm not plague bait. In the Black Death's heyday, fashion wasn't just about looking good, it could be a death trap. Picture the rich strutting through town in long flowing robes, fur-trimmed sleeves dragging like royal capes, velvet cloaks heavy with embroidery. Stunning, sure. But to a flea, it's a 5-star resort with free room service your skin. Those layers of thick fabric were flea condos offering cosy nooks to settle in and start a family. The plague didn't care if you were a lord or a peasant. If you had cloth and a pulse, you were on the menu. The trick was to keep it simple. Survivors stuck to short tunics, tight sleeves, and lightweight linen, less real estate for parasites. Washing your clothes more than once a season. That was radical, practically witchcraft, but it worked. Some folks even burned their fancy outfits, figuring the plague clung to threads. Not wrong, fleas could camp out in your cloak for days waiting for a bite. Forget accessories too. Beaded necklaces, rosemary bundles, or perfume vials might have screamed "I'm prepared," but they didn't scare fleas, they just made you smell like a desperate herb garden. And armour useless. You couldn't sword fight the plague, though some knights probably tried clanking to their doom, because they wouldn't ditch the gauntlets to scrub up. The less you wore, the better your odds. Think plain, think clean, think boring. Your velvet cape might impress the tavern crowd, but it's not worth dying for. Next, we'll explore why heading uphill could save your hide and your nose from the plague's stench. You're trudging through 1348, the Black Death snapping at your heels, and you've got to decide where to park your weary bones. Cities are death traps and villages are safer, but here's a pro tip: head for the hills, literally. Medieval folks didn't know bacteria from a barrel of ale, but they noticed something sharp. People perched on high ground weren't dropping like flies in the lowlands. Was it magic nope, just geography working overtime? Hills meant fewer rats, those furry plague taxis that loved flat, filthy cities. Up high, where the air's crisp and the wind whips through like a broom, rats struggled to find snacks or cosy spots. Fleas, their tiny accomplices, hated the cold and thin air too. Picture a muddy town square reeking of rotting cabbage and despair versus a breezy hilltop where the only smell is pine and your own questionable hygiene. The choice is clear. Hills also meant fewer neighbours, no crowded markets, no sneezing strangers sharing your water bucket. Monasteries, often built on lofty ridges for godly vibes or defence, became accidental plague fortresses. Even a shepherd's shack halfway up a slope was a better bet than a city hovel. If some guy from the valley trudges up coughing and swearing, it's just a tickle. You've got a steep slope and a heavy rock to discourage visitors. It's not rude, it's survival. Elevation wasn't a cure, but it stacked the odds in your favour, trading swampy stench for a fighting chance. Next, we'll dive into why a splash of water could keep the fleas at bay even if everyone thought it was a death wish. It's 1348 and the Black Death's turning Europe into a graveyard. You're hiding out, avoiding crowds, but here's a curveball. Your biggest ally might be a bucket of water. Medieval folks weren't exactly soap enthusiasts. Bathing was suspect, like inviting the plague to a pool party. The so-called experts with their fancy scrolls swore hot water opened your skin to bad air, making you a magnet for disease. Spoiler, they were dead wrong. Fleas, the real plague peddlers, loved dirty skin caked in sweat and last week's stew. A quick scrub, even with gritty homemade soap made from ashes and pig fat, could make you less of a flea buffet. Survivors who washed their hands, face, or gasp whole body now and then weren't just lucky, they were accidentally brilliant. Laundry was another hurdle. Most folks beat their tunics against a rock once a month, hoping the lice took a hike. But those who boiled their linens or swapped outfits weekly, they were practically superheroes by 14th century standards. No toothpaste, no problem. Chewing mint leaves or rubbing salt on your teeth didn't stop the plague, but it made your deathbed chats less offensive. Bathing wasn't a magic shield, but it cut your odds of hosting a flea convention. If your neighbours side-eye you for smelling like a fresh stream instead of a tavern floor, let them. Cleanliness was your secret weapon, even if it made you the weirdest peasant on the hill. Up next, we'll uncover why trusting medieval doctors could be your final mistake. It's 1348, and you're sweating buckets, not sure if it's the Black Death or just last night's questionable stew. Your first instinct: call a doctor. Big mistake. Medieval physicians, bless their overconfident hearts, were about as helpful as a leaky bucket in a storm. They strutted around with grand theories about humours, blood phlegm, yellow bile and black bile claiming your plague symptoms, meant your body's juices were out of whack. Their fix: drain you like a wineskin. They'd slap leeches on your chest or slice your veins, letting your lifeblood pool on the floor while you got dizzier than a drunk at a fair. Then there were the plague doctors, decked out in creepy bird-beak masks stuffed with herbs to fend off bad air. Stylish, maybe. Effective, not a chance. Those beaks were less about science and more about not gagging on the stench of rotting neighbours. Their treatments were a circus of bad ideas: rub onions on your armpits, sip crushed emeralds. or carry a dead toad like it's your lucky charm. Some prescribed sitting in a smoky room, which just meant you'd choke before the plague got you. The real winners folks who dodged these quacks entirely. Nuns, midwives and herbalists with their clean bandages and calm vibes often did better than the bloodletting brigade. If you're coughing up something weird and a guy with a stick and a sack of sage shows up, run. Trusting medieval medicine was like betting your life on a coin toss, except the coin's covered in fleas. Next, we'll explore why monks had the ultimate plague survival hack. You're holed up in 1348, the Black Death turning towns into ghost stories, and you're looking for the ultimate survival playbook. Enter the monks, those quiet, robe-wearing champs who accidentally cracked the plague survival code. Picture a monastery perched on a windy hill far from the city's reeking gutters. These places weren't built to dodge disease. They were for prayer and solitude, but that isolation was a plague-proof jackpot. Monks like the Carthusians lived like medieval introverts, keeping to themselves, eating simple meals, and scrubbing up more than your average peasant hygiene was practically a vow. No shared tankards, no sweaty group hugs, just you, your Latin chants, and a suspicious lack of fleas. Monasteries had their own food stashes, grain herbs, maybe a vegetable patch, so they didn't need to brave rat-infested markets. Celibacy bonus points. No late-night tavern runs meant no plaguey hookups. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. Some monks, noble to a fault, ventured into towns to nurse the sick, catching the plague faster than you can say amen. The smart play. Stay put, skip the heroics, and keep your gate locked. You didn't need a monk's vow to steal their strategy. Just find a quiet corner, grow your own carrots, and tell visitors to come back next year. Monastic life wasn't glamorous, but it was a masterclass in outlasting chaos. Boring, sure. Alive, you bet. Next, we'll dive into why your job and your cat could make or break your plague survival odds. It's 1348 and the Black Death's turning your village into a grim game of chance. You've ditched the city, dodged crowds and scrubbed up, but your day job and your pantry could still betray you. Some gigs were like signing a contract with the plague itself. Messengers galloping between towns with scrolls were basically swapping germs with every sweaty handshake. Merchants. They were the Uber of fleas, hauling spices, cloth and disease from port to market. These folks were brave, sure, but they were also walking plague magnets. Safer bets, blacksmiths, bakers or shepherds' jobs that kept you local hammering iron, kneading dough, or muttering to goats on a hill. Gravediggers, oddly enough, had a grim edge. Their gloves and shovels kept them from touching the dead, and spotting plague signs early made them weirdly untouchable. But the real battle was at home, where rats ran the show. These furry bandits weren't just nibbling your bread, they were dropping fleas like confetti. Smart survivors hoisted their grain onto high shelves or stuffed it in ceramic jars out of reach from rodent raves. And cats, they were your secret weapon, prowling the shadows and thinning the rat herd. Some fools called cats witchy and chased them off, big mistake. That's like firing your only guard during a siege. Keep your scraps far from the house too. A compost heap by the door was a rat Airbnb. Your job and your kitchen could save you or sink you. So pick a quiet trade, lock up your food and let your cat earn its keep. Next, we'll talk about why scribbling your survival story could make you a legend. You've made it through 1348, outsmarting the Black Death's relentless grip. The air's quieter now, the streets less choked with groans, but you're not out of the woods yet. Surviving wasn't just about dodging fleas, it was about leaving a mark, a whisper of your grit for the ages. Enter the scribes, monks and jittery villagers who grabbed quills and parchment to etch their tales. Think of Giovanni Boccaccio holed up in a Florentine villa, spinning stories in the Decameron while the plague raged outside. Or that Yorkshire monk scribbling in a dusty margin, great pestilence came, many died. Short, but it hits like a hammer. These weren't just diaries, they were time capsules warning future folks and flexing a quiet brag about outliving the chaos. Writing wasn't easy, parchment cost a fortune, and your hand cramped like you'd wrestled a goat. But it mattered. Your story could shape how the plague was remembered, turning your survival into a legacy. The catch, you had to stay sharp. Some survivors got cocky, throwing feasts or hugging cousins the moment the death toll dipped. Bad move second waves loved a party. Stay boring, keep your guard up, and wait till the plague's really gone before you crack open the ale. Then pick up that quill. Your tale might rot in a chest or spark a historian's gasp centuries later. This one knew their stuff. Surviving was epic. Surviving with receipts, that's immortal. This wraps our Black Death saga. Stick around for what's next. Picture yourself in ancient Mesopotamia, where the Tigris and Euphrates cradle civilization, and the air hums with clay tablets and whispered prayers. It's 2000 BCE, and someone in your village starts muttering to shadows or weeping for no reason. You'd think they're sick, right? Wrong. Back then, a troubled mind wasn't a medical puzzle, it was a cosmic drama. The Sumerians saw hallucinations or erratic behaviour as evil spirits hijacking your soul, like a demon squatting in your head. Exorcists, not doctors, were the go-to, chanting incantations and waving incense to evict the intruder. These weren't fringe ideas, they were the law of the land etched into Assyrian clay. In Egypt, the Ebers Papyrus, think of it as the world's oldest medical Yelp review, blamed wandering wombs or angry gods for your sudden urge to forget your own name. Treatments, a whiff of sacred herbs, a splash of ritual water, or a plea to Sekhmet to chill out. The Greeks, though, took it up a notch. In Homer's epics, madness was a divine prank. Ajax slaughters sheep thinking they're enemies because Athena's got a grudge. Plato even spun it as a gift. Poets and prophets weren't crazy, they were chosen, their rants a hotline to the gods. But Hippocrates, the OG of medicine, scoffed at that. He blamed your brain's humours, too much black bile, and you're moping like a rained-out festival. His fix? Better diet, a long walk, maybe a nap. Not bad for a guy in 460 BCE. Ancient minds wrestled with madness as a mix of spirits and science, setting the stage for centuries of debate. Next, we'll see how medieval Europe turned it into a sin. Fast forward to medieval Europe, 1200 CE, where church bells clang louder than reason, and the Black Death's not the only thing scaring folks witless. If your neighbour starts hearing voices or pacing the village muttering about invisible devils, don't expect a doctor's house call. The church had madness on lockdown, and their diagnosis: sin, Satan, or both. A troubled mind wasn't a health issue, it was a spiritual crime scene. That peasant woman wandering in rags talking to the wind, probably a witch. A nobleman sobbing for days. He's hiding some unconfessed sin, maybe a deal with the devil. The fix wasn't medicine. It was confession, a whip to the back, or prayers shouted till your throat gave out. Priests outranked physicians who'd nod and mutter about humours but defer to the cross. If you were mad, you might end up chained in a town square where locals tossed coins or jeers for kicks. Bedlam, London's infamous hospital, was less a sanctuary and more a human zoo, where gawkers paid to watch the lunatics howl. Treatment? Dunk you in icy water, bleed you dry, or whip the demon out. Yet flickers of kindness existed. Some monks offered shelter, and far-off Islamic physicians like Avicenna kept humour theories alive, treating patients with music and fresh air. But in Christendom, mercy was scarce. Madness meant exile, a dungeon, or a priest's glare, with no hope of healing. Your mind wasn't broken. It was damned. Next, we'll explore how the Renaissance cracked open new ideas about the body and brain. You're in Renaissance Italy, circa 1500, where artists are chiselling masterpieces and scholars are dusting off ancient Greek scrolls. The world's waking up. But if your mind's unravelling, it's a mixed bag. The church still looms, but its grip on madness is slipping as old ideas from Hippocrates and Galen creep back. No longer is every hallucination Satan's prank. Sometimes it's just your body misfiring. Physicians start muttering about humours again. Too much black bile and you're melancholic. Too much yellow and you're raving. They're fixes. A bland diet, a stroll through the countryside, maybe a star chart to blame Saturn for your bad mood. Sounds reasonable, but don't get cosy. Bloodletting's still a crowd pleaser, and if you're too twitchy, they might strap you to a spinning chair to reset your brain. Asylums sprout up not for healing but to sweep the unpredictables out of sight. Yet a spark of progress flickers. Johann Weyer, a Dutch doctor, dares to say those witches being burned are just sick women needing care, not pyres. His book, De Praestigiis Daemonum, ruffles feathers. Banned by the church, ignored by most. Meanwhile, madness gets a poetic glow in art. Ophelia's drowning grief, Don Quixote's windmill battles, they're tragic, almost romantic. But real help, still a distant dream. The Renaissance cracks open the body, poking at brains instead of souls, but the mad are more likely to be locked away than cured. It's a step, not a leap, toward understanding. Next, we'll see how the Enlightenment trades chains for asylums, and calls it progress. It's the 1700s, the Enlightenment's golden hour, where reason's supposed to outshine superstition. You'd think mental illness would get a fair shake, but it's more like swapping one cage for another. The idea of locking folks up for demonic possession is fading, good riddance, but society's got a new plan. Hide the insane in shiny new asylums. These aren't hospitals, they're warehouses, sprawling estates far from city eyes, stuffed with people society wants to forget. In London, Paris and Vienna, these places promise order but deliver neglect. Overcrowded, understaffed, reeking of despair. The buzzword's moral treatment, which sounds nice until you realise it's a fancy way of saying behave or else. Doctors lecture you on proper manners, demand you make your bed, and call compliance a cure. Philippe Pinel's famous for unchaining patients at Paris's Bessères in 1793. A grand gesture, but the reality's grimmer. Unshackled, sure, but still locked in, facing ice baths or moral rants from a doctor wielding a stick. Some spots, like Britain's York Retreat, try kindness, gardens, quiet, respect, but they're rare. The real shift's in paperwork. Doctors start scribbling notes, tracking symptoms, inching towards science. Yet, it's cold comfort. The Enlightenment makes madness a study, not a sin, but trades demons for dehumanization. You're not possessed. You're a specimen, tucked away so society can keep its tidy glow. Next, we'll dive into why Victorian England turned hysteria into a weapon against women. Step into Victorian England 1850, where corsets choke waists and propriety chokes freedom. If you're a woman and your emotions don't fit the mould, too sad, too bold, too anything, watch out. The label hysteria is waiting, a catch-all for anything that makes men twitchy. Got mood swings? Hysteria. Refusing that marriage proposal? Hysteria. Feeling a spark of desire? You guessed it, hysteria. The word, tied to the Greek for uterus, is a patriarchal trump card, turning your feelings into a disease. Doctors, all men, nod sagely and prescribe fixes straight from a nightmare. Dr. Weir Mitchell's Rescue locks you in bed for weeks. No books, no chatter, just staring at wallpaper till your mind frays. Charlotte Perkins Gilman wrote, "The yellow wallpaper, after nearly cracking under this torture. Then there's vibratory therapy. Yes, it's as weird as it sounds. Or marriage to settle you. In Paris, Jean-Martin Charcot turns hysteria into theatre, hypnotising women at the Salpêtrière Hospital for crowds of gawking students. It's half science, half circus, and Freud's in the audience scribbling notes that'll spark psychoanalysis. Asylums, with their high walls and whispering trees, swallow inconvenient wives, rebellious daughters, or anyone grieving too long. Once you're in, good luck getting out. A single signature can cage you for life. Madness isn't just a condition, it's a social weapon, keeping women in line while calling it medicine. The Victorian era polishes its surface, but beneath, it's drowning minds in silence. Next, we'll see how World War I's shell shock cracked open the truth about trauma. It's 1916, and the trenches of World War I are a muddy hellscape, where bombs scream and death's a constant neighbour. Soldiers, the bravest of the brave, start shaking uncontrollably, screaming at ghosts or going mute, staring into nothing. These aren't cowards, they're heroes, broken by war's relentless grind. At first, doctors call it shell shock, thinking artillery blasts rattle the brain. Wrong. It's the mind itself buckling under ceaseless terror, mud, and loss. Officers who once scoffed at nerves now see entire units trembling, forgetting their names, or frozen in terror. Some commanders, stuck in old ways, brand it cowardice. British soldiers face firing squads for deserting when their minds desert them. But change creeps in. At Craig Lockhart War Hospital, Dr. W.H.R. Rivers tries something new. Talking, listening, letting men like poet Siegfried Sassoon spill their trauma through words or verse. It's a quiet revolution, treating mental wounds as real as shrapnel. Shell shock rewrites the script. Madness isn't sin or weakness, it's a scar from battle. After the war, the term's debated. Some call it a catch-all, others the birth of trauma psychology. The public can't ignore it. Haunted soldiers shuffle through Europe, eyes hollow, minds far off. World War II dubs it combat fatigue, with faster, kinder care, but stigma lingers. Shell shock proves even the strongest can break, shaking society's idea of who gets to be mad. Next, we'll dive into the 20th century's brutal leap into lobotomies and electric shocks. It's the 1930s, and psychiatry is taking a sledgehammer to the human mind, convinced the brain's a machine you can fix with a good whack. If your thoughts are spiralling, the 20th century's got bold plans, bold like a cliff dive without a net. Enter the lobotomy, cooked up by Portuguese neurologist Antonio Egas Moniz, who snips connections in your prefrontal cortex to calm your storms. Sounds precise? It's not. By the 1940s, American Walter Freeman's swinging an ice pick behind your eye socket. No operating room needed. Tens of thousands get lobotomized. Kids, veterans, housewives. Some go docile, others lose speech, personality, or life. Moniz wins a Nobel. Patients lose themselves. Then there's electroconvulsive therapy, or ECT, zapping your brain with enough juice to spark a seizure. Early on, it's raw. No anesthesia, just straps and a prayer. For some with crippling depression, it's a lifeline. For others, it's memory loss and terror. Insulin coma therapy, hydrotherapy, isolation chambers. Doctors throw everything at mental illness like it's a dartboard. Asylums swell state-run warehouses where millions linger forgotten. Stories of abuse leak out, restraints, neglect. Worse, pop culture paints the mad as monsters. Think mad scientists or escaped killers. The goal's control, not care, turning patients into quiet shells. Yet cracks show. Some question if slicing brains is healing. By the 1960s, the system's creaking, ready to buckle under its own weight. These interventions aimed for miracles but often left silence. Minds dimmed, not mended. Next, we'll explore how the modern era tries to right these wrongs, with mixed results. You're in the 21st century, where brain scans light up like city maps and therapies as common as coffee runs, yet mental illness still carries a shadow. The 1960s kicked off deinstitutionalization, promising freedom from asylums' cold walls. Antipsychotics like Thorazine let folks manage schizophrenia at home, and JFK's 1963 bill dreamed of community clinics offering care, not cages. Sounds hopeful, right? Not so fast. Many clinics never got built, underfunded or ignored. Patients, cut loose from asylums, often landed on streets, in jails, or with families unprepared. Homelessness spiked. Prisons became de facto psych wards. Today, neuroscience dazzles. Depression's tied to brain chemistry, genetics, even gut bacteria. Therapy's a billion-dollar industry, and apps ping you to meditate. Social media destigmatizes anxiety. Celebrities spill their struggles. But access? It's a postcode lottery. Rural areas, low-income folks, minorities. Good luck finding a therapist who takes your insurance. Big Pharma's a double-edged sword. Antidepressants save lives but get overprescribed, leaving some feeling like a checklist, not a person. Stigma lingers. Words like schizophrenic still sting. Emergency rooms choke on psych crises they can't handle. Yet, hope glimmers. Trauma-informed care grows. Peer support thrives. Schools teach mindfulness. Neurodiversity flips the script, celebrating different minds. Deinstitutionalization cracked the asylum's grip, but the safety net's still frayed. Mental illness isn't chained to walls anymore, but too many suffer in silence, caught between progress and systemic gaps. This closes our mental health saga. Next, we'll shift gears to warrior codes. You're in feudal Japan, where cherry blossoms drift like whispers and the air hums with the weight of honour. It's the 12th century, and the samurai aren't just warriors, they're living poems bound by Bushido, the way of the warrior. This isn't a rule book nailed to a castle gate. It's a code carved into their souls, passed through blood and steel. Bushido demands 7 virtues: loyalty, courage, benevolence, respect, honesty, honour and rectitude. Slip up and you're not just a failure, you're a stain on your clan's name. Loyalty's the heartbeat of it all. You swear your life to your daimyo, your lord, and betrayal's worse than death. It's spiritual rot. Picture yourself kneeling, sword at your side, vowing to die before dishonouring your master. Courage means facing death daily, not as a foe, but an old friend. If you falter, say you flee battle or shame your name, there's one way out, seppuku. You'd grip a short blade, slice your gut, and spill your guilt in silence, while a trusted friend lops your head clean to spare the agony. Grim Shore. To a samurai, it's a final act of grace, a poem written in crimson. Bushido shapes every breath you fight with precision, live with humility, and die with dignity. Even when Japan trades swords for steam engines, Bushido lingers in martial arts boardrooms' pride. It's not about the blade, it's about mastering yourself. Next, we'll sail to Scandinavia, where Vikings chase glory in blood and fire. Now you're in a frostbitten fjord 9th century Scandinavia, where the wind howls like a wolf and Viking longships slice the sea. There's no Bushido here, no inked code, but honours etched in sagas' graves and the gods' grim gaze. Vikings live for one truth: death's coming, so die well. A warrior's dream isn't a quiet bed, it's a battlefield axe in hand, blood on snow. Why Valhalla? Fall bravely, and Odin's Valkyries whisk you to a warrior's paradise, feasting and fighting till Ragnarok, the world's end. Die a coward, and it's hell's dreary underworld a soul's shame. You raid, you pillage, not just for gold, but for glory, each clash a ticket to eternity. Loyalty binds you to your jarl or king, but it's not blind. Betray your oath, and you're outcast. If your leader's weak, you can walk honour intact. Vengeance is sacred. If kin's wronged, you carve justice with steel feuds, spanning generations like dark heirlooms. Funerals scream this ethos: warriors buried with swords, shields, even horses ready for the afterlife's war. Old age, a curse. Some Vikings seek one last skirmish to dodge a straw death in bed. Your name's your legacy. To be forgotten is worse than hell. Picture yourself gripping an orsalt in your beard, chasing a death that sings. Vikings don't just fight, they audition for the gods' hall. Next, we'll march with Rome's legions, where discipline trumps glory. You're standing in the shadow of Rome 2nd century BCE, where the Tiber glints like polished bronze and the Republic's legions march as one. Here a warrior isn't just a fighter, he's a living cog in Rome's machine, bound by virtues of code-blending valor duty and stone-cold discipline. Forget personal glory. You're not some Viking chasing Valhalla's mead hall. Your honour lies in obedience, enduring pain, and dying for the eternal city. Picture yourself in a legion shield, locked with your comrades, sweat stinging your eyes. Break ranks even in victory, and you're lashed or worse. Cowardice unthinkable. Flee battle, and you're erased from respect, your name spat out like sour wine. In rare cases, entire units faced to decimation. 1 in 10 men clubbed to death by their own brothers to purge weakness. Training's relentless, grueling marches, mock battles, building camps till your hands bleed. Virtus isn't just for the battlefield, it's Rome's heartbeat. Noblemen show it in the Senate, steady in debate, restrained in ambition. Loyalty or aphids glues it together to your unit, your commander Rome itself. Betrayal like Caesar's Rubicon crossing shatters the code, spitting on the Republic's soul. Death in battle. That's your resume for the gods, your tombstone boasting campaigns like badges. You fight not for yourself, but for civilization's myth, thrusting spears to spread order. Roman warriors don't chase fame, they forge eternity, one disciplined step at a time. Next we'll ride into medieval Europe, where knights wrap bloodshed and chivalry shine. You're in 12th century Europe, where castle towers pierce the mist and knights clang across muddy fields. Chivalry's the code here, a glossy ideal meant to tame these ironclad warlords with a saint's halo. It's not written in stone, but sung in ballads preached from pulpits, a mix of martial grit, piety, and a dash of romance. Picture yourself as a knight helm dented, swearing to be brave, loyal, and kind. You're to shield the weak prey twice a day and fight fair, even when your foe's swinging a mace at your skull. Loyalty's non-negotiable. You kneel to your lord oath sealed on holy relics. Betray him, and it's not just treason, it's a one-way ticket to divine wrath. The Crusades paint it, holy slaughter's fine if it's for Christ, turning bloodbaths into sacred quests. Then there's courtly love, where you pine for a noble lady, usually hitched, dedicating joust to her like a lovesick poet with a lance. Sounds noble, don't kid yourself. Plenty of knights were brutes torching villages and trampling peasants. Without a blink, chivalry didn't apply to the rabble. The code's a shiny myth, half-truth, half-hype, but it shapes a dream warfare, as ritual loyalty as law, honour as theatre. Your lance isn't just a weapon, it's a prop in a grand play justifying every swing. Chivalry's flawed, but its legend gallops on cloaking killers in virtue. Next, we'll meet Sparta's warriors where discipline cuts sharper than steel. You're in ancient Sparta, 5th century BCE, where the air crackles with grit and every man's a soldier before he's a man. Forget flowery codes. Sparta's warrior ethos is raw, unyielding discipline carved into boys from birth. If you're born weak, you're left on a hillside, pass muster, and you're thrown into the agog. A brutal training camp that's less school, more forge. Picture yourself at 7, ripped from home, sleeping on reeds barefoot in winter, hungry but silent. You learn to fight steel, endure pain, and speak in sharp, laconic bursts. Words are for doers, not dreamers. Courage isn't a choice, it's law. Run from battle and you're a tresant, stripped of citizenship, shunned by women, a ghost in your own city. The Spartan Code's mantra, return with your shield or on it, win or die, no middle ground. Loyalty's to Sparta itself, not some lord. In the phalanx you lock shields with your brothers, protecting the man beside you. Break formation, and you're not just failing, you're betraying. Mother sends sons off with a grim nod, with it or on it. No one's chasing personal glory. You're a gear in Sparta's war machine. Marriage, family, even love boat are duty. Your life's not yours, it's Sparta's from cradle to grave. For centuries, that iron unity made the phalanx untouchable, a wall of spears no enemy dared test. Spartans didn't live like warriors. They were weapons honed to kill or die without a flinch. Next, we'll ride with the Mongols where victory cuts cleaner than honour. You're galloping across the Central Asian steppes, 13th century, where the wind bites like a blade and the Mongol horde moves like a storm. Under Genghis Khan, these warriors built an empire stretching from sea to sea, not with numbers, but with a code of ruthless precision. Loyalty's the spine of it. You swear your soul to the Khan, and betrayal's not just death, it's erasure, your name wiped out like dust. Picture yourself a Mongol rider trained from childhood to shoot arrows at full gallop, live off dried meat, and sleep under stars with no fire. The Yasa Genghis' law isn't a suggestion. Disobey orders, loot without permission, or flinch in battle, and you're done, executed, no appeal. But this isn't blind brutality. Mongols prize strategy, fake retreats to lure enemies, sparing cities that surrender, raising those that don't. Merit's king here. A peasant who proves his worth can lead armies, no noble blood needed. You ride light, strike fast, and vanish a ghost on horseback. War's not about honour or gods, it's about winning cold and clear. You don't fight for glory, you fight for results, every arrow a step toward victory. The Mongol code isn't poetic, it's a machine efficient and unstoppable, turning nomads into conquerors. Your horse, your bow, your will, they're one, and empires tremble before you. Next, we'll march with the Zulus where unity and spears forge a nation. You're in early 19th century southern Africa, where the sun scorches the savannah, and a warrior king named Shaka Zulu reshapes a fractured land. The Zulu code isn't just about fighting, it's about forging a nation from sweat and spears. Shaka's revolution turns clans into a war machine with warriors bound by unity, courage, and absolute loyalty. Picture yourself in an Impisa regiment of young men trained as brothers, living, marching, and dying as one. Shaka swaps the old throwing spear for the Ikelwa, a short stabbing blade for close combat paired with a massive cowhide shield. You charge in the buffalo horn formation chest, forward horns encircling loins ready to crush. It's not just tactics, it's a heartbeat, every step synced. From adolescence you're moulded, running barefoot, sparring till you drop forbidden to marry, until your blades tasted battle. Cowardice unthinkable. Break ranks or flee, and you face public execution, your name a curse. Loyalty to Shaka's ironclad, he's god and general. His charisma, a fire is wrath a storm. You fight not for glory, but for the Zulu people, your life a shield for the nation. Bravery earns cattle, prestige maybe a song sung by fires. Shaka's code makes warriors, legends, ordinary men into a single unbreakable force. When your Ikelwa rises, empires learn to quake. Next, we'll slip into the deserts of the American Southwest, where Apache warriors dance with shadows. You're in the American Southwest 19th century, where canyons glow red, and the Apache warrior moves like a whisper on the wind. No kings or castles here, just a code of survival woven through oral tales and the harsh sacred land. Warfare's not a choice. It's breathing, with settlers, tribes, and US soldiers pressing in. Picture yourself as a boy trained to run barefoot across scorching sand, dive into icy rivers, fast for days and stay silent under stars. Your strength's not in muscle alone, but in will reading tracks and broken twigs vanishing into cliffs like smoke. The Apache code prizes stealth over swagger, ambushes, hit-and-run strikes. That's not cowardice, it's genius. You strike fast, fade faster, leaving enemies grasping at dust. Loyalty is to your band, your kin, not some distant chief. Avenge a slain cousin, but keep it measured. Recklessness starves the tribe. Boasting's frowned on. Your deeds speak, earning quiet nods around the fire. You fight not for conquest, but to guard your people, your home of deserts and peaks. Leaders like Geronimo defy armies dodging capture with guerrilla grit. Even in exile, your spirit stays unbroken, no code bends to chains. The Apache warriors calm in voice, sharp in eye, deadly in silence, keeping balance in a world that wants you gone. Next, we'll stand with the Sikh Khalsa, where faith and steel forge saints into soldiers. You're in 17th century India, 1699, where empires clash and the air hums with defiance. The Sikh Khalsa, forged by Guru Gobind Singh, isn't just a band of warriors, it's a revolution in armour, blending faith with ferocity. Picture yourself kneeling at initiation, vowing to fight tyranny and live righteously. The Khalsa code shatters norms, no caste, no class. A farmer stands equal with a prince, all taking the name Singh Lion to roar as one. You carry the 5K's uncut hair iron bracelet, wooden comb shorts and a ceremonial sword, the kirpan you're pledged to strike against oppression. Loyalties to justice, not kings. You defend the weak Hindu or Muslim no matter the cost. Discipline's ironclad, no drinking. No harming the helpless, just meditation and service. Warfare's a last resort, not ego's playground. When you fight, it's fierce. Mughal armies vast as seas crumble before your outnumbered resolve. Your battle cry, a thunderous chant, isn't just sound. It's purpose. Betrayal's rare. To be Khalsa is to live the vow your identity forged in courage and sacrifice. Picture yourself Kirpan, gleaming, standing against a tyrant's blade, not for glory but for what's right. The Khalsa turns saints into soldiers, their legacy, a beacon of fearless equality that burns even today. This closes our warrior saga. Next, we'll dive into America's dry spell with Prohibition's roots. You're in Kyoto 1860s, where cherry blossoms fall like whispers of a world unravelling. This isn't the serene capital of poets anymore. It's a cauldron of blood and betrayal. Japan's splitting at the seams, the Tokugawa shogunate's grip fraying as foreign gunboats crack open its borders. Samurai from Choshu and Satsuma, eyes blazing with Revere the Emperor expel. The barbarians stalk the streets, their swords itching to carve a new era. Every alley hides an assassin. Every river a body, and every tea house hums with plots to topple the shogun. Picture yourself a merchant dodging shadows, the air thick with smoke and suspicion, knowing one wrong glance could cost your head. The shogunate hold-up in Edo sends the Roshigumi, a ragtag militia of masterless ronin, to guard their leader in Kyoto. But 13 of these men, hearts pounding with a fiercer loyalty, refuse to leave when the job's done. They see Kyoto as Japan's soul, a battlefield for honour, not just duty. Backed by the Izu domain, they become the Shinsengumi blue-clad wolves tasked with crushing rebels. You hear their sandals slap the cobblestones, their katanas gleaming under lanterns. In a city where loyalty is a blade and chaos is king, these ronin aren't just guards. They're a storm ready to cut through the fog of revolution. You're in Kyoto's twilight 1863, where lanterns flicker like the last gasps of a fading era. The city's a tinderbox, and a band of 13 ronin masterless samurai with nothing but grit and blades refuse to slink back to obscurity after escorting the shogun. These men, backed by the fierce Aizu domain, form the Shinsengumi, a name that'll soon make rebels flinch. They're not high-born warriors, they're farmers' sons, disgraced swordsmen, men like Serizawa Kamokondo Isami and Hijikata Toshizo, whose hunger for honour burns hotter than any noble's crest. Picture them huddled in a dim inn, swearing oaths over sack, their blue houri jackets, a vow to guard the shogunate's crumbling throne. Their mission patrol Kyoto's alleys, sniff out imperial plotters, and keep the shogun's flag flying. It's no parade, they're outnumbered, underfunded, and mocked by samurai who sneer at their low blood. Yet their swords are sharp, and their will is iron. Serizawa's a wild card, drunk on power and wine. Kondo's the steady hand, a dojo master with a dreamer's heart. Hijikata's the cold blade eyes like a wolf's. You hear their footsteps echo on the wooden bridges, a warning to traitors. In a Japan splitting like bamboo under an axe, the Shinsengumi aren't just a militia. They're a brotherhood forged in blood, ready to carve order from chaos. You're in a Kyoto safe house, 1863, the air thick with tension and the tang of steel. The Shinsengumi, barely born, already teeters on collapse. Serizawa Kamo, their co-leader, is a wildfire drunken brawls, extorting merchants, slashing civilians like they're kindling. His chaos threatens to burn the group's fragile name. Kondo Isami, the steady dreamer, and Hijikata Toshizo, his icy enforcer, see the rot. Loyalty to the shogunate means nothing if their own ranks fester. So under a moonless sky, they strike a night raid, swift and merciless, where Serizawa and his loyalists fall to their comrades' blades. Picture the scene, blood on tatami lanterns flickering the Shinsengumi's first purge, a grim baptism. This isn't betrayal, it's surgery. Kondo takes the helm, Hijikata his shadow, forging a code as sharp as their katanas. No desertion, no disobedience, no private duels, break it, and you face seppuku's knife. The blue haori now means discipline, not just defiance. You hear whispers in Kyoto's tea houses, these wolves don't just hunt rebels, they devour their own. The purge sets the tone, ruthless unity, loyalty above all. In a city where every shadow hides a dagger, the Shinsengumi sharpen themselves a blade honed by their own blood, ready to cut through Japan's chaos or die trying. You're in Kyoto, July 1864, the humid night alive with cicadas and the flicker of paper lanterns. The Shinsengumi, those blue-clad wolves, catch wind of a plot that could torch the city. Choshu rebels, imperial firebrands plan to burn Kyoto kidnap officials and shatter the shogunate's grip. The tip leads to the Akida-ya Inn, a quiet lodge hiding a nest of swords and treason. Kondo Isami, heart steady as a drum, leads 10 men through the mist. Hijikata Toshizo trails with backup. They burst into the inn lanterns swaying and face a room of armed rebels outnumbering them like wolves to a lone stag. Picture the chaos. Steel flashes, screams split the air, tatami mats soak red. It's not a fight. It's a slaughter. The Shinsengumi's blades dance in the cramped corridors, their Tenin Rishin Ryu swordplay carving through panic. 2 hours later, 7 rebels lie dead. Others captured, the plot snuffed out like a candle. One Shinsengumi falls a few limp away, but their name ignites Kyoto. The shogunate hails them as saviours. Even critics whisper respect. You hear their haori rustle in the streets, now a symbol of terror and order. The Akeda incident isn't just a raid. It's a legend born in blood, proof these Ronin will die before letting Japan's old ways burn. But every corpse they leave makes a new enemy, and the wolves' howl grows louder. You're shadowing the Shinsengumi through Kyoto's fog, 1864, their blue haori cutting through the night like a blade. Their fame from Ikeda-ya isn't just blood, it's built on a spine of iron discipline. These aren't mere swordsmen, they're a machine forged by Kondo Isami's vision and Hijikata Toshizo's ruthless will. Recruits train daily in Tenin Rishin Ryu not for duels but for slaughter in alleys and tea houses, where a single strike decides life. Hijikata, the demon vice commander, drills them until their hands bleed, his glare colder than a winter sea. Break their code, no desertion, no defiance, and you face seppuku, your own blade carving your shame. They're spies as much as warriors, weaving a web of informants, monks, merchants, maids who whisper rebel secrets. A midnight knock, a flash of blue, and traitors vanish their screams, swallowed by the city. Picture a recruit heart pounding, swearing loyalty in a candlelit room, knowing one misstep means death. Their haori isn't just cloth, it's identity Shinsengumi before self. From 13, Ronin they swell to nearly 200, but growth breeds cracks, spies slip in, weaklings falter. Hijikata's purges keep the blade sharp, but you feel the cost. In a Japan tearing itself apart, their discipline is a vow order at any price, even their own blood. You're in Kyoto, 1867, the air heavy with the scent of cherry blossoms and betrayal. The Tokugawa shogunate, once Japan's iron fist, is crumbling, cracked by foreign ships, rebel swords, and a tide of change no blade can stop. Satsuma and Choshu, once warring clans, now unite behind the emperor, their rifles gleaming with western know-how. The Shinsengumi, those blue-clad wolves, still patrol the streets, but their legend sours. Once hailed as Kyoto's guardians, their midnight raids now feel like the snarls of a cornered beast. You hear whispers in tea houses, their justice is brutality, their loyalty a relic. Picture a citizen glancing nervously at their haori, wondering if the wolves are saviours or executioners. When Tokugawa Yoshinobu, the last shogun, kneels to the emperor, it's a gut punch. His resignation's a ploy to cling to power, but the imperial court sees through it, claiming Kyoto for the throne. The Shinsengumi hearts forged in Bushido refuse to bend. They flee south to Fushimi swords, sharp spirits frayed. Picture Kondo Isami, his eyes weary but unyielding rallying men who know the world's shifting under their sandals. The age of samurai is fading, replaced by bullets and treaties. Yet in their blue jackets they cling to a code older than gunpowder, ready to fight for a Japan that's already half a memory. You're in Fushimi, January 1868, snow falling like ash on a battlefield where history turns. The Shinsengumi, loyal to a dying shogunate, face the imperial army at Toba Fushimi, a clash that ignites the Boshin War. Their blue haori flutter like ghosts against a foe armed with rifles and cannons, western weapons that mock their katanas. Kondo Isami, worn by years and wounds, leads with stubborn honour. Shikata Toshizo the demon fights with a snarl. Picture them charging through gunfire, their blades slicing riflemen in tight quarters, defiance burning brighter than their odds. The imperial banner, gold and untouchable, breaks Tokugawa allies. Some flee, others surrender. The Shinsengumi don't. Blood stains the snow, their lines shatter, and they retreat in a haze of smoke and shame. Toba Fushimi isn't just a loss. It's a death knell for the samurai age. The imperial court brands the Tokugawa traitors, turning the Shinsengumi into outlaws. You see Kondo, his face carved with resolve, rallying survivors for one last stand. Their swords, once Kyoto's law, are now relics in a world of bullets. Yet they march south, not for victory, but for honour. Their haori a fading cry against a Japan reborn in fire and steel. You're trudging through a cold spring in 1868, the Shinsengumi's blue haori, now a target in a Japan that's turned against them. Kyoto, once their hunting ground, belongs to the emperor, its streets spitting scorn at the shogunate's last wolves. Defeated at Toba Fushimi, they're fugitives fleeing south with Tokugawa's remnants. Kondo Isami, battered by war and doubt, clings to leadership, his dreams of honour fading like mist. Hijikata Toshizo, eyes like sharpened steel, drives them forward, refusing to trade their katanas for mercy. Picture them a ragged band under a grey sky, their sandals heavy with mud, vowing to fight a lost cause. In Edo, Kondo's captured his alias, unravelling like cheap thread. The Imperials behead him, his skull displayed in Kyoto, a brutal taunt to loyalists. You see Hijikata jaw tight, swallowing rage as he leads north, rebranding the survivors as the Koshuji Chutai, a shadow of their old glory. They dodge Imperial patrols, their numbers thinning as allies defect. Yet Hijikata's will is a forge tempering despair into defiance. In a land rushing toward a new dawn, these Ronin are ghosts chasing a samurai's death over a life on their knees. Their flight isn't escape, it's a march to a final stubborn stand, their blades singing of loyalty sharper than any surrender. You're in Hokkaido, 1868, where snow howls across a land as untamed as the men who cling to it. The Shinsengumi, now a flicker of their Kyoto fire, join the Republic of Izo, a desperate shogunate dream reborn on Japan's frozen edge. Led by Enomoto Takeaki, a naval strategist, and Hijikata Toshizo, their vice commander, this breakaway state is less a nation and more a samurai's last gasp. The Imperials, with modern rifles and ironclads, hunt them like wolves, closing on a wounded bear. Picture Hijikata, his haori frayed, but his katana gleaming, rallying fewer than 100 men, their posts, their faces gaunt but eyes unyielding. Izo's a bleak stage, windswept fort, scarce supplies, and a cause colder than the sea. Hijikata, no longer Kyoto's shadow slayer, plans defences, leads charges, his voice a blade cutting through despair. You see him ride into skirmishes, sword flashing, knowing victory's a ghost, but honour's real. The Imperials tighten their grip, seizing strongholds, until Hakodate the final stand. In this icy exile, the Shinsengumi aren't fighting for power, they're carving a death worthy of their code. Izo's republic is a fleeting dream, but for these wolves, it's a battlefield where loyalty burns brighter than the northern stars. You're in Hakodate, June 20th, 1869, the northern wind screaming like a banshee as cannon fire shakes the earth. The Republic of Ezo, the Shinsengumi's last refuge, is crumbling under the Imperial Army's modern onslaught. Hijikata Toshizo, the demon vice commander, rides through the chaos, his blue haori tattered. but his katana a mirror of his unyielding will. At 34, he's no longer the shadow slicing through Kyoto's alleys. He's a general leading a dwindling band of samurai against rifles and fate. Picture him sword flashing in the fray near Goryakaku Fort, his eyes burning with a pride that scorns surrender. Then a bullet tears through his lower back and the wolf falls blood pooling in the snow. His body vanishes, some say buried in secret, others cremated to defy desecration. His final letter, penned days before, carries no regret, only a plea to be remembered. You feel the weight of his fall, the Shinsengumi's heart snuffed out with him. Ezo surrenders soon after the samurai age, fading like cherry blossoms in a storm. Hijikata's death isn't the blaze of steel he might have dreamed, it's a gunshot cold, and modern a fitting end for a man out of time. Yet his ghost lingers in the frost, a testament to loyalty that cuts deeper than any blade a warrior who chose honour over breath. You're in Meiji Japan, the 1870s, where steam trains hum, and samurai swords gather dust. The Shinsengumi. Once Kyoto's feared wolves are gone, their blue Haori a memory in a nation racing toward modernity. The Meiji era buries feudalism, banning katanas and dissolving the samurai class, yet the Shinsengumi's shadow grows larger in defeat. Writers spin them into tragic heroes, men who stood against the tide, loyal to a shogunate that crumbled like old parchment. Picture a theatre lanterns dim as actors in hurry reenact Acadia's blood-soaked night, the crowd's eyes wet with nostalgia for a Japan lost to rifles and treaties. Kondo Isami beheaded but dignified. Hijikata Toshizo, the demon felled by a bullet. Okita Soji, the prodigy cut down by illness, they become myths. Their code of Bushido a bittersweet echo. You hear their names in ballads, see their faces in woodblock prints. To some, they're relics outmatched by progress. To others, they're the soul of samurai honour choosing death over compromise. Their story, raw and human, captures a nation grappling with its past. In a world of factories and foreign suits, the Shinsengumi's legacy isn't victory. It's the stubborn fire of men who fought for a fading dream, their blades carving a tale that outlives empires. You're in modern Japan, strolling past a Kyoto museum where blue Haori replicas hang like ghosts of a lost age. The Shinsengumi, those fierce samurai of the 1860s, are no longer just warriors. They're legends woven into Japan's cultural tapestry. Their story of loyalty, blood and defiance against a modernizing world lives on in manga panels, anime battles and blockbuster films. Picture a reenactment in Fushimi actors clash as Kondo, and Hijikata their katanas flashing under festival lanterns, while crowds cheer a past they'll never know. The Shinsengumi's blue jackets, once feared, now sell as cosplay gear, their Tennen Rishinryu strikes mimicked by fans. From Okita Soji's youthful grace to Hijikata's iron snarl, these men are icons of a samurai spirit that refuse to kneel. Museums in Kyoto and Tokyo display their swords, letters, even blood-stained relics drawing tourists hungry for their saga. You feel their pull in anime like Rurouni Kenshin, where their loyalty haunts every frame. They're more than nostalgia. They're a mirror for a nation balancing tradition and change. In a world of bullet trains and neon, the Shinsengumi stand as a cry of honour. Their blades a reminder that some fight for ideals, not victories, and their story cuts deeper than any sword. Picture this. It's 1325, and you're jolted awake in a medieval village that makes your worst camping trip look like a luxury spa. Forget Hollywood's shining knights and fairy tale castles. The Middle Ages are a gritty, grimy fight for survival, where you're more likely to wrestle fleas than dragons. If you're cozy in bed right now, hit that like button and subscribe. Only if you're vibing with this journey, and drop a comment with where you're tuning in from and what time it is. It's wild to see who's joining us from across the globe. Now dim the lights, maybe flip on a fan for that soft hum, and let's dive into a world that'll make you kiss your Wi-Fi router in gratitude. You blink awake, sprawled on a straw mattress that's more bug than bed, the air thick with the stench of damp hay and last week's goat. It's not a bedroom, it's a wooden hut, one room for you, your family, a couple of chickens and an army of insects throwing a rave. The church bell clangs outside a relentless medieval alarm clock that doesn't care if you got 3 hours of sleep. Your blanket, a wool slab unwashed since the last king's coronation, weighs as much as a small pony caked with grime and regret. No memory foam, no fluffy pillows, just a scratchy pile of misery that smells like it was dragged through a barn because it was. You're 22, which has basically seen